With Mr. Hawaii Plateau, what's going on? Do we know Paul?
Yeah, it's not what they're doing today. Yeah, at the court center.
So we did have a little.
Okay, it is 1 o'clock, time for our regularly scheduled meeting. At this time, I'll ask Madam Clerk, is there a quorum?
Yes, Mayor.
And with that, I think we have Commissioner Cessna who will give the pledge and invocation.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you have given us, and thank you for the recent moisture that has nourished our lands. We come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting to help us make decisions to move our community forward in a positive direction. Be with all of our citizens in the community, but especially be with our first responders and watch over them and keep them safe as they do their duties and responsibilities in our community. And as we pray, amen.
Commissioners, before we get started too, I'd just like to make mention that we do have an ad on the agenda, so we'll note that as the request of the body considering an executive session pursuant to KSA 75-431B, and this pertains to personal matters to non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations. Because of this matter we're discussed in open session might invade the privacy of those discussed. So just make note of that. That'll happen under the other, when we get to the others.
I think that'll be a new 12G, Mayor. I think our agenda goes, got a pop up here. Hang on.
Yes, 12.
Not now.
We have a D and an E.
Boom.
I think it's F.
Yeah.
12F.
12F.
Oh, we did update you.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, very good.
Item 12F. Yep. Underneath. Okay. Okay, now we go into item number 4, approval of the minutes of the last regular meeting, which, if no corrections are offered, shall remain approved.
Just one had a little change that I talked to Corey about. Other than that, nothing major.
Okay. Item 5 is public comment. So at this time is where public can come to the microphone and please state your name for the record, and we'll allot 5 minutes per spokesperson to discuss anything that's not on the agenda for today. To next item.
Mayor and Commissioners, item 6A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a request from Dylan Neiswanger to waive the sign ordinance and right-of-way restrictions to have banners placed at Stevens Park from June 4th through 10th for the Race Against Trafficking event.
Mayor, I move that we approve the request as presented.
I second.
Okay, is there a motion and second? Any further discussion?
Yes, so in the form, the entry form number 12, this is removal of the pillars on Pioneer Trail. As you know what those pillars are.
Those are ballards, I believe. I can turn and look to either street or parks representation on that, but my guess is those would be the access ballards that are there to prevent vehicles usually.
That's correct. They're there to keep the public for the vehicles off of the trail. So there's a lot of people on the trail. Makes sense to leave those there.
Yeah, so I guess it might be discussion on streets because it seems like the pillars are there to Those are there to protect the pedestrians, the runners.
Yes.
Good suggestion. We'll have that discussion with them and, whatever, if the governing body's comfortable with whatever is mutually agreed upon between the staff and the event holders, then we ask you to approve the balance of the request.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed.
Item 6B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a request from Dylan Nicewater to waive the sign ordinance and right-of-way restrictions to have a banner placed at Stevens Park from June 4th through 10th for the Race Against Traffic.
That's a duplicate.
This is a duplicate print.
Okay.
Yeah, disregard. The 7A, thank you to the city's electric department for responding in a mutual aid capacity. Mike can give you a little bit more background, but we received a really nice thank you letter from the city manager of Russell, Kansas, thanking us again for helping them out following a pretty significant weather event.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. They had, up in Russell, they had quite a storm blow through and took out a bunch of power poles and a bunch of trees were down. And so they initiated the mutual aid, and Garden City was one of the ones. So we always double check with Matt, the city manager, to make sure that we can send crews up there. We've been up there twice now in the last 6 months to assist the city of Russell with some other communities that also show up. So it's a very good thing, and I think we took 3 of our power poles, large ones, with us. We actually had the street department assist the electric department this time to haul the poles up there. So it all went very well, and they were very grateful for the help. So,
Thanks, Mike.
yep.
Provide that for them. Thank you. Matt, just go back on 6B.
Yeah.
That should be the softball memorial.
Yeah, the governing body is comfortable with this. The agenda was, the heading on the agenda was incorrect. The event itself is a request from the organizers of the Joshua B. Smith Memorial Softball Tournament. The requests within this form are consistent with past years, and staff would recommend approval of the waivers requested to hang their banner as well for their tournament.
Mayor, move that we approve the request to waive the sign ordinance and right-of-way restrictions to place a banner at Fleming Street and Main Street from June 17th to 21st, 2024.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed.
Thanks for
Thank
catching
you.
that, yeah. The remainder of the report of the city manager is staff reports and then the Cox Communications channel line changes. Any questions on any of those items or comments? Any of those? All right, I will also report that within the last few days, we have had some discussions on the 2 topics when we've been working with Finney County. There was a neighborhood and development services agreement discussion on Friday, and maybe Mayor will report out on that in his comments, but there was a significant amount of time spent in that discussion. Also, this morning, Finney County's data gathering consultants for the jail portion of the LEC discussion were in town, and Garden City Police Department staff and myself were invited to participate. We spent about a little over an hour with those consultants asking really good questions about the way Garden City Police Department interacts with the operations of the jail, and just kind of getting some requests out there for data that can help them help the county plan for what the future of jail facilities in Finney County might look like. So we appreciated that invitation. Meetings of note are listed. I will also advise not just the commission but the public as well. We've been invited to participate in the Kansas Water Authority's local consult meeting. They're adopting a style that's worked pretty well for the Department of Transportation. One of those meetings is the morning of June 18th, which is your next regularly scheduled meeting, over in Dodge City at their convention space at the near Wireless Arena. It's from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m. You are invited to attend, and because there's a chance that a majority of you might be present at that event, it is public, but I just thought it would probably be in everyone's interest. And we'll make some notation on the agenda for June 18th as well. But there will be several staff over there, so we won't have a pre-meeting workshop on that date, but we will. You will have the opportunity, if you choose and if your schedule permits, to go over to Dodge City and participate in the Kansas Water Authority's local consult meeting. So we'll be sharing a lot of information about not just water quantity issues, but water quality issues as well over there, and probably have an opportunity to discuss a little bit about our water reuse project, as well as other measures we've taken to help reduce the water footprint of this community. All right, with that, I think we're ready for item 9A. It's the appropriation ordinance, and if approved, it would be ordinance number 2564-2024A.
Mayor, I make a motion we approve appropriation ordinance number 2564-2024A.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed.
Item 10A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a resolution establishing a date and time for a public hearing regarding Lost River Edition Phase 1 Reinvestment Housing Incentive District. If approved, this would be resolution number 3110-2024. Alicia.
Mayor and Commissioners, as required by the RHID statute, this resolution establishes the date and time for a public hearing at which the development plan and an ordinance for the extension for the duration and the assignment for the Lost River Edition Phase 1 Reinvestment Housing Incentive District. The date and the time proposed for the resolution is July 16, 2024 at 1:15 p.m. A preliminary copy of the development plan to be considered at that time will be available in the city clerk's office. This is a current RHAD that was established on June 15, 2021. Lost River Edition Phase 1 is generally located at the 1500 to 1700 block of Stonebridge Lane. This development will consist of 37 lots in which assignment developer Spear Construction intends to provide lots to build single-family homes. Your alternatives today are the governing body may approve the attached resolution, or the governing body may not approve the attached resolution. And staff recommends the governing body approve the attached resolution.
Mayor, I make a motion we approve resolution 3110-2024.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a request from Western Kansas Career Showcases for a sponsorship of $50,000 from the city of Garden City. Derek.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Western Kansas Career Showcases aims to create a platform for career engagement among students, parents, school districts, businesses, and industries in Western Kansas. This initiative aims to help students stay in local communities by fostering a grow-your-own approach to support their community and local workforce. Since 2023, 7 showcases have been held, attracting over 1,000 students from more than 30 school districts. The primary goal of these showcases is to build relationships with educational institutions, students, businesses, and the community, thereby improving rural workforce retention and leadership development in the region. Western Kansas Career Showcases seeks the City of Garden City's support to match Finney County's $50,000 sponsorship. For 2024 and 2025, 8 showcases are scheduled throughout Southwest Kansas, demonstrating their commitment to expanding and sustaining the initiative. At the May 7, 2024 Commission meeting, the governing body directed staff to gather more information from Western Kansas Career Showcases into a range of presentations if possible. Additional information is attached, and Bob Kreitzer and Joe Cole are available to answer your questions. So there are 4 alternatives for the governing body to choose from. Alternative number 1. The governing body may approve the sponsorship request for $50,000 for Western Kansas Career Showcases. And 2. The governing body may approve the sponsorship request at a different level of the Western Kansas Career Showcases. Number 3. The governing body may take the request under advisement and consider funding the sponsorship request during the 2025 budget allocations or deliberations. And number 4, the governing body may deny the sponsorship request from Western Kansas Career Showcase. It is staff's recommendation that the governing body take the request under advisement and consider funding the sponsorship request during the 2025 budget deliberation. Fiscal note on this is there is no funds appropriated in the 2024 budget for this proposal. The City Commission could direct spending down of general fund cash balance to fill this request or consider it as a 2025 budget item. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the governing body may have, and Bob Price and Joe Cole will be ready to answer any questions.
I'd love to hear a little bit about how the program works, and then also this idea about, I was curious about how you're interacting with the different economic developments around the area, if they're partnered with you, and how that all works.
Thank you. I'm Joe Coles. Great questions. Just a little tidbit. We've been at this for about 7 years, and this is our first year of having a budget and 2 part-time employees. We've grown to this part. It's all about relationships. We tell our business, yes, we want to help you find people that will work with you in a career they love, and living in a place they love. We all know our hashtag is start here, stay here. If we can find someone in the area that will stay here, we're more likely to keep here. We work very closely with the Garden City Economic Development. We've worked with them about apprenticeships that they're going to be doing. We've also worked with people on internships. We're growing into, we have a lot of your businesses, and by the way, thank you we had a City County Essential Showcase. Now, a showcase is more than a career day. A showcase, if you would attend, you would see that we expect our kids to act right, to look right, to make first impressions. I'm a leadership guy. We had your people. We had 42 different speakers from the City County Essentials. They got to experience not only listening about career opportunities, but you also brought in fire trucks, you brought ambulances, different things where people could see. So that's only one that's here. We have a healthcare showcase that's here. We've also are going to expand into some other areas. Why it's so important, I feel, for Garden City is a lot of your area communities, people drive into work. We keep those avenues open, the customer side of it. Customers come in from the Daytons, the Deerfields, the Cimarrons. So it's not just growing the city of Garden City, but the surrounding area.
So what would the $50,000 go to?
It would, Bob, you want to share?
My name's Bob Kreitzer. Joe and I are going to kind of tag team. I kind of work on the number side of it and also from a business perspective. Basically, our budget this year, as we started, was $150,000. As it was stated in the old business recommendation, Finney County came forward last year and gave us $50,000, and they're going to do it again this year. And they gave it out of ARPA funds, not out of the taxpayer type basis. Typically, a showcase costs about $5,000 to put it on. Now, like anything else, if you're going to buy a fire truck, you're going to spend this much money, but that doesn't deliver it to a fire. You have all of these other expenses. We have an employee and a half. And so our budget for employees is less than $70,000. So that's where a lot goes. Then we've got to be able to find a way to go out and reach all of the school districts. We've always had a great working relationship with 457 and 363, trying to get those kids in here. But what we've learned is that if we can get to Cimarron and Montezuma and Celeste, Satanta, Ulysses, Hugoton, Scott City, Ness City, Dayton, all of these places, and we can keep them in their area. We don't have to build housing. We don't have to do daycare. And yet they can still come here and work. Finney County, Garden City are the ones who really win if we can get this working. And I think what we've shown over the 6 years and 7 years as we've been learning, and this year as we've tried to perfect it, it's become a real win. These 1,000 students, they come to these showcases. We tell them what the theme is of that showcase. So when those students come into that building, they've already indicated an interest in that career. And when your people did what they did down at that Essential Showcase and showed them what it was like to have that career, it really opens their eyes. And that's the real win. So if that amount of money doesn't fit your budgets, I understand. You know, I was a businessman at one time and I had to spend my money. You have to spend the community's money. Anything you can do each year. We finished this year with a little money in the bank. So excited. We had a board meeting this morning and went through the financials. And we can feed Joe for the next month and a half, and then at the end of our fiscal year. And we planned 8 showcases, and we can at least pay for the first 2. So we've got to go out and rally. Here's how we go about fundraising. The county has given us that running money. We go to the businesses, and for a $1,000 membership, they can attend 2 showcases. And a showcase, what their attendance is, they go to a table much like this. They sit down and they share, because Joe brings a group of 15 to 20 students to that table, and they have 10 to 15 minutes to interact and share what it is they do. And then Joe blows a whistle and everybody shifts, and a whole new set of people come. But all of them focused on that. And when your staff was doing that, it was really interesting to watch them do that. And then in the afternoon, Joe turns them loose and they go back to any one particular table they like. So you get that one-on-one. So the level of $1,000, and then there's a second level of $2,500. And they can go to 4 showcases. So they can go to the different disciplines and interact with the students that are going to be there. So businesses have a way in. And typically, businesses pay basically half of the budget, and we go out and ask cities and counties, and we have what, Clark County, Gray County, and Comanche County are also contributors. And we're going to keep going to these other counties, but a lot of them don't understand the concept. And that's why it was so key to get this year behind us and to get your awareness. We would love to have the money we're asking for, the $50,000 level, but we know and understand it's not in someone's petty cash drawer. Anything you can do to help us this year is awesome. If we can be on next year's budget list, fantastic. But it's so important that we keep this going. And the relationships that we have with the school districts, Joe just had a special session with counselors and principals talking about their independent plan of study and how this picks up immediately how to get a student out of the classroom into a job placement through job shadowing, internships, and these showcases to show them what can be done. So that's who we are, how we go about it, and what we're trying to do.
Just to add to it, it's more than just a tender showcase. When he talks about every high school student in the state of Kansas has to have an individual plan of study. Part of that individual plan of study is you declare a career path, and then in that, once you declare a career path, you need to be exposed to job opportunities in that career path. Some school districts can afford to bring in different careers and have career days, some can't. Some of our smaller ones only have one counselor. So we're providing one thing, is we're providing where they can come in and be exposed to different career paths that a school district doesn't have to. Another one is job shadowing. Next year, we're going to go to every business that signs up. And by the way, those businesses get more than attend a showcase. They also, if they want to send it out an email blast to all of the students that have given us their email addresses, we cannot give them student emails, but we can get an email blast out talking about that business, what they're looking for. An example is one of the John Deere ones that's a member of ours. We sent an email blast. They got 6 contacts of kids that might be interested in coming visiting with them. Okay? They also get, when they come to a showcase, they sign up and say, we are interested in having kids sign up to job shadow with us. As of our meeting this morning, another thing we're going to offer is you have a construction site like your new one that's going to have the
Sports of the World.
Sports of the World. We're going to bring kids in where they can go and shadow several different types of careers at that job site. So it's all about relationships. The way we're going to keep people here is kids get exposed to businesses, businesses get exposed to kids. So it's more than just show up and attend a career day. Other questions?
Gentlemen, I've got one just for clarity. Well, first of all, thank you for the work you're doing. It's our staff gave a lot of good feedback to the city-county showcase that you had. They attended, and so we do some of those career fair type things, and there's some value in all of them, but I think they felt like there was a lot of value in yours. So thanks for what you've been doing. If the city commission either today or down the road makes a determination of what they want to contribute and when they want to contribute it, is it fair to interpret that there'd be some level of flexibility to participate in these showcases? I see value in going to some of the other ones other than just the Garden City one, particularly the multi-career showcases or maybe even technical and vocation for some of the utilities. But do we have the kind of the flexibility to work around that if they come in at a level that maybe might be below what the initial ask was, but could be something above the $2,500?
I think the real key would be something above the 2,500, because we have to be fair to all of our
Sure,
business partners.
understand.
But if you came in at any point above that,
Yeah.
absolutely. The county has been invited to everyone, obviously.
Right.
But they have that opportunity, and you could tag team and find out, because anytime I think Garden City, Finney County can show a presence, I think it expands the influence that we have in the communities around us, which is so essential.
Yeah. And to that end, I appreciate the regional nature of this. And while we do view ourselves as the regional center, there are a couple of other communities of a significant enough size that they would see themselves as a regional center as well. Are they participants, specifically Dodge City, Ford County, or Liberal and Seward County? I notice you have events in both cities.
We've had a request into your city to the east, and they judge they're doing everything within their bounds to do all of this. And we personally think it's kind of short-sighted, but they have elected not to participate. And yet their community college and their school district and many of their businesses are very definitely involved.
Oh, okay.
And we're introducing a showcase in Liberal this year with the idea it hasn't been an area that we've really focused. And Seward County Community College is a participant along with Dodge City and Garden City.
Right.
They're all part
So all three communities, whether it's coming from public, private, or
Yeah.
this version of public or that version of public, everybody's kicking in regionally.
They're all
So,
involved,
thanks.
yes. Not always at the city-county level.
Sure.
But at the business level.
Okay.
There's businesses from all of those, and then we're actually meeting with Liberal next week to find more businesses. And we'll have a multi-career showcase.
Gotcha.
Along with Scott City. But yes, your people would be invited to any of the communities. Yeah. Or any of the showcases. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I feel fired up, so thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Mayor, I make a motion that we request under advisement and consider funding their sponsorship request during the 2025 budget deliberations.
Second.
Trying to get my bearing right. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Item 12A, the governing body is asked to consider the following findings of fact and conclusions with regard to the selection of a retail electric supplier for properties annexed pursuant to ordinance number 2977-2024. City Attorney Cunningham.
Good afternoon, governing body. Before you today is the next step in this annexation of property that we've been talking about. The governing body voted to annex real property located on the western half of North Jenny Barker Road right-of-way, adjacent to the RAP property, which is the annexed property that we're talking about today, pursuant to ordinance 2977-2024. This was done on March 19th of 2024 and became effective on March 30th of 2024. At the time of annexation, this particular piece of property was in the Wheatland Electric area to be served. And so per KSA 661-17682, there are several factors that you have to consider in who you're going to choose to serve that, whether that be the Garden City utility or whether that be Wheatland Electric. Those are generally listed out for you, and we'll go through how those apply and the information that's been given to you previously. If you find through those factors that you end up changing who that utility is, there is a payment equal to 8.5% of gross revenues on retail sales attributed to new customers in the territory in which service rights have been terminated for a period of 10 years following the date of termination of service. In this particular case, the city is asking that you choose the city utility department to serve the annexed property, which would then terminate Wheatland's rights that they previously had to that property as of September 26, 2024, 180 days after the March 30th date that this became final. And then the statutory payment would kick in at the 8.5%, and that would be valid until September 25th of 2034. Previously to this meeting on April 22nd, we did provide notice to Wheatland Electric of the annexations and asked whether or not they wanted to serve this property or whether or not they were requesting a franchise for the annexed property, and they were not. On May 7th, the governing body received the evidence from Mike Muirhead on these different factors, and Wheatland was not present, although they were notified about the meeting. So based on those things, the things that you're looking at considering are public convenience and necessity, rates of various suppliers, desires of customers that will be served, economic impact on the suppliers, economic impact on the customers of the supplier's operational ability to serve the annexed area, avoiding the wasteful duplication of facilities, avoiding unnecessary encumbrances on the landscape, preventing the waste of materials and natural resources, and any proposals from anyone in the area that could serve. And then public interest, of course, is the very last thing that you're considering. So today, in front of you, you're going to see that we're asking that you make 3 recommended conclusions. The first being that the city utility department shall be the retail electric service provider on the annexed property pursuant to the ordinance 2977-2024. That Wheatland will be compensated for the termination of its retail service rights according to state law, and that with regard to the factors listed in KSA 661-17682, that the governing body will make the following conclusions A through K listed out for you, and that addresses each one of the specific factors that you were given in your previous meeting and how those are weighed in your conclusion of choosing Garden City Electric Utility. Any questions?
So I know this might have been in the previous, but did Wheatlands provide a written statement of declination toward being or is it just something that they called and said, or do we actually have a written?
So the communications with Wheatland is usually done by email, and Mike Muirhead or myself will reach out to them directly and request information, whether it be noticed to them or whether it be us asking what they would like to do in regards to an annexation. So we do keep records of that through those emails.
So I'm not for sure if it's on this one or the motion specifically. We have to have a specific motion with specific wording. Is it this one that we have to have that specific wording, or was it the last one? I don't.
So both. One, you had the specific wording of the last one, but you do have to make all 3 conclusions here. So you have to go through each one of these. You have to find that these factors, that you weighed all of these factors, and then you have to actually make the first 2 recommendations. You have to actually make those conclusions today as well.
Okay.
It's written out for you under recommended conclusions to try and help. So then, and then it also lists your, I don't know my part, but anyway, yeah, it's written recommended conclusions, and then it lists out 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Does anybody want to make that motion?
Yeah, Mayor, I move that we approve the recommended conclusions. Number one, that we conclude that the city utility department shall be the retail electrical service provider in the properties annexed pursuant to ordinance numbers 2977-2024. Do we do these separate, or do we need to do them?
Yeah, I would suggest you do them separately.
So the motion would be on what?
One.
Number
Commissioner
one.
Unruh had
Yep.
mentioned?
I second.
Commissioner Warren seconded. Any further discussion on that one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed.
Mayor, I move that Wheatland Electric Company will be compensated for the termination of its retail service rights according to the state law.
A second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion on that one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed.
And Mayor, finally, I move that we, with regard to the factors set forth in KSA 66-1.176A2, the governing body concludes the following, and then the following factors, do I need to name them out?
A through
Just A through K.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that last one? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Mike. 12B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve appointments to the Zoo Advisory Board. Chrissy.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. The Zoo Advisory Board is a 7-member body. We have 2 of those who are rolling off, Brian Deerstein and Yolanda Leyva. We appreciate their service very much, but we need to replace them. When the timing came up, we advertised the openings on our social media platform. The city did it also, and of course, word of mouth. We received 4 applications, which are attached in your documents. The Zoo Advisory Board reviewed all applications at their last meeting and made a recommendation that Susan Rojas and Mary Funk be appointed. You, of course, have the options to appoint those 2, appoint any of them, or delay appointment until another meeting. There is no fiscal impact by making this decision.
Mayor, I make that application, so.
Mayor, I make the motion that we appoint, as the recommendation by the Zoo Advisory Board, Susan Rojas and Mary Funk to the 3-year terms on the board.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you.
Next one, hang on.
You feel the excitement?
All right. Now that the drum roll's ended, item 12C, the Finance Director Coleman will review the general fund for the commission and your initial review of the 2025 proposed budget. And so he's also going to cover the anticipated property tax impact and the current state of the draft budget, since this concludes the first review of all the funds. Jerry.
So I'll start here, go ahead and read the background portion of the memo to provide some information, and then I'll get into reviewing the budget with you. So this portion of the 2025 proposed budget presentation focuses on the general fund. As with the review of funds in previous meetings, the review of the general fund will include both a review of revenues and expenditures. The general fund revenues include the following assumptions on these large revenue line items. Number 1, ad valorem or property tax number that represents a 3% increase in valuation. The total dollar value assessed in property taxes for the City of Garden City for 2024, so including the budget prepared last year, was $10,738,229. based on a final valuation of $287,354,271. Assuming an increase of 3%, the city's estimated dollar value of $11,060,841 for the 2025 budget. This is broken out with $1,370,074 allocated to the airport fund, $2,893,097 allocated to the debt service fund, and $6,797,670 allocated to the general fund. 2024 city sales tax, county sales tax, and consumer use tax receipts, which represent a 0.6% increase, 0% increase, and 1.3% increases respectively over the original 2024 approved budget amounts. 2025 city sales tax and county sales tax, which represent a relatively flat increase compared to the 2024 budgeted amounts, and consumer use tax receipts, which represent a 5.2% increase. By the time the governing body is positioned to consider an indication of revenue neutral rate intent in early July, publish a notice for a revenue neutral rate hearing and/or notice of budget hearing in early August, or finalize and adopt the 2025 budget in early September, there will be more clarity on these revenue line items. The general fund expenditures shown in the budget have historically reflected the department budget requests as presented to the city manager for preliminary review. While this usually yields the city manager's proposed budget that requires the suggested ad valorem tax amount higher than what the governing body desires, it serves as a good starting point for the budget discussions that ensue over the following 2 months with full transparency of department requests, administrative recommendations, and the governing body decisions. This year, as in years past, department directors presented fair and reasonable budget requests. Nonetheless, the relationship between projected revenues and requested expenditures was such that the gap left to be filled in over the next 2 months of budget deliberations was considerably higher than the past 2 years, nearly $7 million versus the $2 to $3 million in recent years. In a change of style, but still true to the underlying value of being transparent with department budget requests, staff has identified reductions across all general fund departments as recommended by department directors. The revised number is reflected in the 2024 projection column. We have preserved the line item reductions with a description for the governing body's review and consideration. Furthermore, department directors have prioritized these cuts should the governing body wish to reinstate funding once the revenue picture is clear. These adjustments are included as an attachment to this item. The general fund as presented today has a shortfall of $891,444. The city expects to receive the estimated valuation from the county by June 15th of 2024. This valuation will replace the assumption of the 3% increase. Dependent upon the estimate, the shortfall for the general fund may increase or decrease. At that time, staff will work to provide scenarios for the governing body to choose from, which will allow for a balanced budget, which may include adjusting projected revenues for the city or eliminating some expenses. The proposed general fund budget presented today may appear to those following city budget deliberations over the last several years to be in great shape, by comparison to budgetary gaps left to close by the city commission and staff in past years. That is not the case, and this year's proposed budget is not an apples-to-apples comparison to how budgets have been initially presented. The department directors of this organization, working in conjunction with the finance director and the city manager, have made some difficult decisions and have eliminated proposed service delivery improvements, equipment upgrades, capital projects, and training and development plans to create a path for the governing body to consider which preserves existing levels of service and holds stable the property tax and mill levy. So, as we get into this, there's a few different attachments. The first is the general fund budgets, just the same as we've seen in the last few with the PDFs. Then you have the supplemental documentation provided by the departments that kind of goes through the narrative of what exactly is included in those line items. A lot of the departments are going quite a bit of detail, so rather than me go into detail today, I'll kind of hit the high notes and highlight those on the third document, which are those things that have been reduced or eliminated from the initial proposal budget to be able to hit that mark of reduced that 6.7, under $7 million number that we were kind of off to start with. On this first page, you'll notice that I have the general fund at the top with the $891,444 anticipated cash deficit at the end of 2025. Also included are all the other funds that we've already presented to you. As items come before the governing body during the budget process, if requests are made to add a cost or add a project or purchase equipment that wasn't included initially, I do go back and adjust the budget to account for those before our final state budget is approved. And so you may see some variation to the 25 ending cash balance in this column compared to what was presented initially. And so you can kind of follow the breadcrumbs to those approvals or those adjustments that departments have made to their initial plan. And then when you approve that final state budget in September, that's what will then kind of ink it on paper for the final budget. As I go through these, if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them. And department directors or department heads from most of these departments, if not all of them, are here today to be able to answer any questions that I'm not able to, or they can speak to much better than I can. So they're ready and willing to jump up and help you understand any question you have. So with that, we'll go ahead and start with the revenues for the general fund. I'll point out here the third line, the ad valorem tax, that's $6,797,000. That's, if you remember talking about the airport and the debt service, we allocate the need there from the total levy of the property tax. They have kind of priority in the past. And so if the valuation comes in higher or lower than the 3%, this general fund ad valorem line will be what is changed, but the airport and the debt service will not change. Those are already going to be allocated at that level. And so this is the number that will be that delta to vary. We do have the estimates from the county treasurer, and so the motor vehicle tax, recreational vehicle tax, those personal property taxes, those are the final number that will stay in the budget since we got those a few weeks ago. Then you can see our large revenue lines here. On the first page are city sales tax, county sales tax, and consumer use tax. We are budgeting fairly flat. We experienced a few years where we had very significant increases in sales tax. Last year was pretty close to flat, slightly up, but quite a drop off from what we had been experiencing the few years prior to that. And so we're budgeting in a conservative way to make sure that we don't anticipate an increase and it not occur. And so those are staying fairly flat, if not slightly increased over the last year's figures. There's an uptick in the fines for municipal court. We've seen an increased caseload and kind of accomplishment of cases in that regard, and so that has upticked for both 2024 and 2025. We also previously anticipated all the different pieces of the court costs that would come through the court, so the state law enforcement fee, the judge's fee, these different pieces that were passed through, basically, we would collect them and send them on to the entities that we had to allocate them for. We would collect them in our revenues and then disperse them from one line in the municipal court budget, instead to kind of track them on a more specific manner to see that revenue is equal. We're going to pay those from the revenue lines here. So instead of having revenues in the past, like you see $17,000 last year for that state law enforcement fee, it's now budgeted at $100 because it's going to come in and then be expensed out of the same line and basically be a net neutral wash. And there's also a reduced then correlating expense in the municipal court budget that I'll highlight for you when we get to there as well. Most of our other fees on this page, licensing costs, are staying relatively the same in the budget. Our building permits, we've increased slightly with the trend of kind of what's happened year to date. We're slightly up from last year, or than budget would have assumed, and so we've increased those slightly. Last year was collected about $440,000, so we've upticked those for both 24 and 25. Our interest income as well, interest rates have stayed high, so we have increased the amount we anticipate in interest income for the cash balance bank accounts of the city. And so we anticipate those numbers to stay up next year. There may be some adjustment to those interest rates. They may decline if the Fed does change the rate, but we anticipate at this point that it won't be a drastic decline, and so we're budgeting a little bit higher than we had initially for 2025 as well. I'll point out the bottom line here, the transfer admin overhead, as well as the top line of page 4 are those admin overhead and utility franchise fees from the electric utility, water utility, and solid waste utility that come to the general fund. And so those are where those are represented. And then in the transfer other line in 2024, this is a couple of the items from the breakout of all the different kind of adjustments that have been made to the general fund budget to get it to where it is today. This is the transfer of the $408,000 from the capital improvement reserve from projects that have previously closed out and finished and had some funding left over, as well as $200,000 from the work comp reserve coming in to help this year's budget. And then I'll point out that transfer for the .30 sales tax, this is upticking for the operational cost of the third fire station. We hired some staff this year, but then next year we hire our last 6 staff for that for the fire station, and they're the leadership positions. So there's 3 fire 2s and 3 fire lieutenants. So those costs are a little higher than what we've experienced with the other fireman positions that have been added, since they are those higher level leadership positions. And so you'll see quite a swing in that cost next year versus this year. But that'll be fully operational, all the staff costs, all the equipment costs that go with them, all of their gear, all of that's included in that 1.6 for 2025.
So Jared, on this 3638 utility fund reserve, is that just, are you now separating those out? Is that why that's a zero amount? was 3,126,000.
Yeah, so previously, utility funds reimbursement, we had it kind of all lumped into one line.
So now that's where you.
And so we've broken it into that admin overhead, which if you look back at the 23 actual, it was only a portion of the year since we made the shift during budget last year. And then that utility franchise fee, the same thing. It's only $1,059,000. Well, that doesn't represent the whole entirety of that transfer in 2023. The rest of that was in that utility fund reimbursement. This is just helps to paint the picture a little clearer, keep it separated out into the two lines instead of just one. When we'd go back and try to calculate and kind of re-look at what it was a little harder to put apart. So this simplifies things. Next is the commission budget. Here, pretty much the same as normal. I will point out the maintenance contracts we have budgeted here. This is for the new agenda software for the commission meeting agenda that we have adjusted for, and so that annual ongoing cost will come out of this commission division. But everything else is pretty similar. You have training and travel costs for the commissioners to attend city-related business, and then salary and benefits as well. Next, we have the city manager budget. Here some shifts that you'll see. The communication surveys is a new line. We broke out communications if we're going to add a survey specifically about kind of anything city-related that's general, and include it with the utility bills that go out, or if we're going to do something through an online platform, we'll have some funding set aside here to go get that information back from the public and have funds available to get that data. Most of the rest of this is fairly similar to what was originally budgeted or budgeted in the past. The supplies postage, I'll point out that we've upticked this line on page 7. We previously would allocate all the postage costs among general fund departments individually, but it was a little bit more of a hassle to itemize that out and break it out. And so since it's all from the same fund, we consolidated that out of the city manager's budget to make things a little simpler, similar to what we did with IT last year, paying for all the general fund computers, rather than allocating those out to departments as well. And so we'll see that uptick this year and next year for the kind of the general fund cost for postage. And then that new equipment software from last year cost, that was the software, the initial cost of the software for the new agenda software, and the rest will come out of commission in the future. Next we have admin, the service and finance department. Here I'll point out the audit expense has continued to increase, so we have adjusted for 24 as well as 25. A lot of that has to do with new requirements from GASB, new regulatory deals that we look at, and the auditors have to go and validate against our books for. With each new issuance of GASB regulations, there's more work to be done, and so those have continued to increase. Also, a couple years back when we took on the Recreation Commission, that was quite a bit of work as well, and increased capacity. So we've seen an uptick there. And the cost for the audit is spread between the electric utility, the water utility, and the service and finance department. Here I'll point out there's some adjustments have been made to the training, travel, some of the office supply line as reductions to this department budget. On the sheet, on that third document that is provided in the agenda item. I'll continue to just kind of mention those so that they're on your radar as we go. Next we have legal services, the contract for our city attorney work, as well as our bond counsel and each other general legal services comes out of this budget. We have reduced it from the initial budget of $325 to $315 for 24 and 2025 as another item to help on some budget savings. Next is municipal court. I'll point out here the contract services line, 5270. This is the payment for the judge contract. Right now, we've had times where the judge was a city employee. We've had times where there's a contract shared with the county. And currently, this is a contract we have with this individual specifically for city judge services. And so that's that line. Their maintenance contracts for the court are increased this year to account for the new software costs for the Tyler system that they're implementing, and they're also paying for their legacy system, so they overlap in this year as they make the transition, but then when that legacy services are off, that will drop back down some in 2025. And they have reduced their training and travel lines as well as their court-appointed lines for some budget savings, and they have in 2024, their new equipment line is to purchase a new copier as theirs is aged and they need to replace it. For human resources, they have the $13,000 you'll see in consultant fee is upticked a little. That is to finish off the last payments for the pay study analysis that was completed last year by McGrath. We have their maintenance contracts up as well. We anticipated we would be able to eliminate a few of the maintenance contracts, the services and software that they utilize with the new Tyler system, but they've turned out to not be quite apples to apples, and so we're keeping them for the time being as we evaluate the options within Tyler and make sure that we have some smooth transition there if we convert away from what we currently have. The HR department the last few years has spent a lot of time and energy building the NeoGov software as we have it for all of our hiring and onboarding, employee evaluations, and training amongst city staff. And they've reduced a handful of different lines, their office supplies, their training and travel, their advertising and hiring to accommodate the budget. Next is IT. Their main line that I'll point out that's shifted is their maintenance contract line. There's a lot of different softwares, a lot of different individual elements that the IT department has to utilize to keep our servers up and running and have security. With all the different security breaches you hear about recently with Wichita and others, there's just quite a bit of cost added each year or continue to be added for security reasons for our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure. And so those costs have increased, and we anticipate they'll probably continue to increase as we make sure that we stay secure and protected as the city. They are upticking this year. There's a 5-year contract they plan to bring before the governing body that will help to eliminate costs of those increases year over year. And so that's why 24 is an upswing besides, and then drops back down to 25 rather than making that a year-by-year payment, or they're doing a 5-year agreement, which will help to keep those costs low over the next 4 years. Also, very large on their line that is noticeable is line 6511 for new equipment software. If you'll remember, we've talked about the network refresh for our servers with a very high price tag. As they've been able to negotiate that down, it came in less than anticipated, so there's a reduction in the 24 projected budget to account for that reduction in the network refresh. And then they have some other equipment. Next year, they anticipated adding out some access control, improved access control for some departments that currently don't have, like the key card access. And they reduced that to make the budget work for now, but that would be their priority one to get back, at least even if it's a scaled back plan of what they anticipated to do. That would be their first priority if funds are added back to their budget. Also including that line are the general fund department computers, servers, ongoing camera servers for the zoo, and then access control if possible. Next is our city prosecution budget. With this being a contract, it stays the same amount at this current time, and so that's budgeted as $200,000 for 24 and 2025. Next, we have communications. I'll remind you, this was broken out. It used to be IT and communications were budgeted together. This is the first full year that we've had communications separated out. So if you look at their 23 actuals, they're very minimal because most of the year, those costs would have been encompassed in the IT budget last year. They have maintenance contracts as well. A lot of their maintenance contracts account for the city website, some of their social media technologies that help to tap into social media and do communications with citizens, as well as our surveys. And they've reduced the plan for having Zen City in 2025 and looking into other options as a budget reduction. And they also anticipate that next year with our website fully live, the new website fully live, we won't have the 2 website costs that we're having this year as they convert over. Next is neighborhood and development. All things pretty equal on a lot of their items. The engineering fees, I will point out, this is for all engineering costs for kind of general engineering of the city. If there's engineering costs that are tied to a specific project, those engineering costs are paid for within that project scope. And so this is kind of the run-of-the-mill general engineering for general services of the city. They've made reductions across their maintenance contracts, some of their travel and training, repair vehicle, amongst other things, and their office supplies for the budget reductions. And then in 2024, we've added the new equipment vehicle, $40,000. Currently, they have a leased vehicle that has 3 more years on the lease, and they plan to pay that off to be able to avoid that interest cost for the next 3 years. So it's a savings of about $6,000 to pay it off now. And so with interest rates higher, as we've been renewing some of these leases that we've been doing the previous years, 3-4 years ago, it made more sense when it really wasn't costing us a lot of interest. But at this point, those have all kind of ticked up, and so we're looking to move away from that at this time. Next in your pages should be the capital improvement. This is somewhat of a catch-all for the other of the city, the general fund. Here you have the fireworks costs for our 4th of July and Veterans Day firework programs. The Main Street program listed here is for Downtown Vision. Their budget request is included in the supplemental documentation, and they have a slight uptick in 2025 over the 2024 figure. Also, economic development. Historically, we levied a mill or allocated a mill worth for our economic development line here, and then we would portion of that out for Economic Development Corporation, and then whatever was left would go to the county for the Economic Development Joint Fund. The last few years, Economic Development Corporation has requested $305,000, which has exceeded the value of a mill. So we haven't budgeted more than that and sent anything to the county's Economic Development Fund. But the Economic Development Corporation has requested again for 2025 that same $305,000 they've requested the last 2 years. Also out of this is our golf course building transfer. This goes out to the golf course to help subsidize their budget. Our facilities maintenance line that covers this building has been reduced for both 2024 and 2025. And then our miscellaneous line, I'll point out, the municipal band request that is included comes out of that miscellaneous line here. I'll also mention at this time that included in the 24 projection is $300,000 as a transfer to the CIP fund from the general fund. This is the bankroll to keep the CI fund moving, and any CIP projects or CIP plan that the commission approves. This is the funding source of those projects. In 2025, one of the proposals listed out on the supplemental sheets is to utilize the excess 0.15 sales tax dollars to basically be the funding source of CIP projects for the future, for the next period of time. The commission could choose to do that. The commission could choose to add back dollars into the general fund transfer in lieu of that. This year, if you'll remember, that those 0.15 sales tax dollars are going towards the Southeast Park bathroom and pavilion is what they were approved for. Last year, the funding went to the airport for some of the furniture, some of the other type of things, as well as the golf course improvement project. So we've been, in essence, you've been doing that kind of CIP initiative from those excess $0.15 the last few years. So keeping on with that would be to just transfer them into that fund and then allocating from there. Next, we get into police. The first is their revenues. They have a reimbursement from the school district and a few other entities for police services that are allocated. I'll also point out the reimbursed DEA, reimbursed TSA, and reimbursed CLICS grant are new revenue lines included here. And previously, those were expense lines in the department budgets and patrol and investigations that were then coded in with the revenues. To kind of clean that up and make it where all the revenues are in one place, we've moved them into this section instead. And then I'll point out that the sales and the fees for the indoor range are newer, with the range being in operation now. And with the values last year giving us an indication of kind of what those will look like, we've increased the 24 projected numbers for that, as well as 25. In police administration, I'll point out their maintenance contracts is the $323,000 this year, $352,000 next year. The breakout of all of those different maintenance contracts they have is in their supplemental information. The list is fairly comprehensive. They've made reductions to their maintenance contracts. They've made reduction to their physical exams, their repair buildings line for 2025, as well as all of their new equipment vehicles they've eliminated from the budget for 2025 for their budget savings. And their priority to add back in would be vehicles if at all possible. Even if their plan initially was 6 vehicles, if it's less than 6, their plan would be to purchase and use any funding they get back to purchase some vehicles to stay on track with their plan. I'll point out the repair vehicle line they have is for some of that increase is for the specialty vehicle. They have their Humvee, the Bearcat, and a few others. They're working on some upgrades or kind of improvements on those, as well as just the maintenance and upkeep of those vehicles as well. Also, at the bottom of this, you'll see the new equipment vehicle in 2024. This encompasses purchasing 6 vehicles for this year. And if you'll remember, previously we were leasing vehicles, and they'd be a 3-year lease, and they'd kind of rotate every 3 years. And so we had 3 payments each year for these vehicle leases. Well, we moved away from that, and we're purchasing outright the batch that we're buying. So 2024 incorporates the last payment of the 2022 lease of vehicles, the lease purchase on them, as well as the 6 new vehicles. And so if we purchase vehicles next year, the number will be decreased because it won't include that lease portion as well. I think the estimate was $260,000 if I remember off the top of my head. And then their new equipment other line in 24, this incorporates the payment for their new software, equipment for their new vehicles, so all of the lights and sound bars and everything else going to them, body cameras, radios, and then a big chunk of it is for the mobile command costs. That's the city piece for those federally congressional congressional discretionary spending that we were awarded through the COPS grant. And so right now, the actual is $843,000 in the year, but we should be getting the $500,000 from the COPS grant in for their piece of that, and it will then go in and wash out $500,000 of those costs year to date. Next, we have investigations. The police department, the administrative department houses a lot of their other type of costs, and then the other divisions are very much salary and benefits and maybe uniforms and some other small things, but it's very much a kind of all the other stuff goes under the police administration. So here you'll have the salary and benefits for investigations. You'll see an uptick in the 2024 and 2025 numbers for salary and benefits. We've reallocated some of the budget amounts for those because of where they're allocating their staffing. Historically, all the patrol officers came out of patrol, regardless of where they were assigned in the department. But we have a handful of officers that are assigned under investigations and do work under investigations. So we've shifted the budget to appropriately represent the actual assignments that are being carried out right now by these staff. So there are some patrol officers that were previously budgeted on patrol that are now budgeted under investigations. The total count of employees stays the same. It's just shifting which pots of budget those salary benefits are coming out of. Also, I'll mention at this point that we have included on the savings document, we have looked at any position that was vacant any time between January and May, and we've reduced those salary and benefit lines by those values of what would have been paid. And so we haven't touched the in perpetuity yet, but we have grabbed those dollars and reduced those budgets. That's something we've done in the past, but typically in July when we were discussing with the commission kind of the options and the alternatives. And so we've done that a little earlier this year to account for that. But any department and police investigations, police patrol, and police support services have quite a bit of vacancy. And so the 24 line versus the 25 line, you'll see an uptick. Some of that's due to the fact that 24 has been reduced from what it would have been if it was fully staffed all year long. Police patrol, here you have the salaries and benefits again. The elimination of that salary reimbursement, those two lines there, those have been moved to the revenues. And then our uniform expense, they have reduced somewhat in this year as well, in 2025, as a budget savings line. Support services is primarily all of the salary and benefits for that division. This includes the dispatch, this includes the records clerks, as well as the evidence technicians. And then you have police animal control. We have 2 animal control officers, and our main piece here is the contract we pay to the Humane Society to keep them operational. We do get a piece from the county that they pay us, and then we pay our piece and the county's piece to the Humane Society. And then we have our indoor range. The salaries here represent the part-time employees that help as range safety officers. The clerical part or the cashiering element of the staff that go out are either patrol officers, usually, or police staff, or right now it's the Service and Finance Department, Municipal Court, or records clerks. Also go out and work part-time or work hours at the range to help to keep that operational as well. And those costs for those salaries and benefits come out of their normal department budgets as well. Next we get into fire. The fire revenues you'll see are the rural fire contracts. These are for the townships and what they pay. Some are based off of certain mill levy portions. Some are based off of number of calls. All those contracts are being reviewed right now by the fire department and are something that will probably come before the governing body at some point. Some of them have been the same or very consistent for a long time, and so they're being reviewed just to kind of see, are they where they're supposed to be, or are they where kind of market would indicate they should be. One of the recommendations from McGrath when they did the fire department study was to review those contracts and make adjustments as necessary. The fire administrative budget, this incorporates the chief, the admin assistant, their training officer, their fire marshal, and their inspector. The rest of all the staff of fire will come out of the operations budget. Here they have their maintenance contract line. They've added some new software for calls, and they also have a new maintenance contract with Excelicare for the well-being and health of the firemen. And so those are 2 costs that have added, and you'll see that uptick in 24 and 25. That's where those are coming from. They've reduced their repair buildings line as one of their reductions for 25. They had planned to do some ceiling repairs at fire station number 2, and they're going to put those on hold. In fire operations, they've reduced their repair equipment line for power units. They reduced their repair vehicle lines. Their new equipment, they're holding off on a 2025 command vehicle. and then some supplies and some other various equipment they've reduced as well. All the rest of their budget lines are fairly similar to what was initially budgeted in '24, and '25 is following similar trend as well. We have fire volunteers and fire ARF. These have some '23 actuals, so they generate in this report, but these are not being used for future budgets. All of those have been lumped into the fire operations. Next, we have Parks and Cemetery Division. The revenues here say parks, but since those are lumped together, they're really cemetery revenues. So this is our cemetery spaces, the grave openings, and monument settings. Those are trending or budgeted to be very similar to past years. For parks, they've budgeted very similar to the previous year. They do have some reductions in repair grounds, repair equipment, repair buildings, repair vehicle, and then they've removed some of their equipment plans. They plan to purchase a couple of the, one this 2024 and one in 2025 of the robot mowers to be able to leave it at some specific parks that have large amounts of grass. And they're going to hold off on those for now. They also, if you'll look, the presentation today given by Tisha, the new equipment parks line, that's 6515, the $30,000 in 2025 represents $20,000 set aside for some of the park improvements to kind of start that project going. They budget $10,000 in each of those years as kind of the routine maintenance that's needed to keep things up to par. But that additional $20,000 next year is for some level of improvement. So if the commission does elect to allocate more, that's where we could put those funds, or we could go through the CIP fund as well to proportion a piece out for those park improvements as we go down the road. Next, we have cemetery. Their budget is very similar to 2024 original as well as 2025. They've made some reductions to their repair lines as well, and then they had a dump truck or a bucket truck in 2025 they were planning to purchase that they have pulled out of the budget. But in 2024, you'll see their new equipment other line, that is a dump truck that they're planning to purchase and use in 2024. Next is the zoo. You'll have their gate receipts. This is for the drive-through revenue for the drive-through traffic for the zoo, and that's on track with previous years as well. The zoo administrative budget, this is the staff that are kind of out of the FinUp Center for the most part as well, and the leadership positions, as well as the conservation staff as well. The reductions that they have made are to their training and travel out of the zoo administrative budget, and the only real kind of shift from the original 24 and kind of trend for 25 is the plan to replace their van that they have right now. It keeps breaking down on them and giving them mechanical issues. And so 2024, we've added $40,000 to replace that van and get a vehicle that's more reliable for them to be able to, especially with sometimes they're going out of the city and traveling with it. Those mechanical issues have really caused them some grief. Zoo maintenance. The zoo maintenance department does a lot with what they're allocated and what they're given. If you remember a few years back, they purchased a sawmill. The equipment they get, they repurpose. They use a lot of what they have to really add value to the zoo. And the crew does a great job of adding a lot of benefit with not a lot of cost. They have pulled back on some of their 25 plans for equipment. They plan to purchase a Polaris to replace some of their another vehicle that's not really as functional as it could be. Their Polaris is, if I remember right, it locks up and it ends up tearing up the ground because it's a four-wheel drive, and so it kind of tears it up, and maneuverability is an issue, and so they were looking to replace that in 25. It's also aged, but they've removed that from their budget and put it on hold. They also have some plans for improved water conservation irrigation efforts, and then some zoo improvements. They wanted to add that plaza remodel and then add cable fencing to some of the animal pens rather than the chain link fencing they currently have, and all of those have been put on hold for now. Other than that, things are very similar to what the original budget was, and their 25 numbers kind of follow suit. For zoo animal care, they had initially planned to add some heated auto waterers in the winter time. The crews have a hard time hauling out hoses to fill tanks. They freeze, they got to break them open. So adding some heated elements to it that will also auto water would alleviate a lot of staff kind of pain and burden there. And those were planned for 25. Those have been withdrawn at this point with the budget. They've also decreased their training and travel in the zoo animal care division. And then they plan to rehash the crane shelter, and they're going to hold off on that as well. The zoo animal health and nutrition. This is the specific division we broke out last year for the vet and the animal care, kind of that veterinary care. You'll see that the contract vet services line has been increased in 2024, that we currently have a vacancy in our zoo veterinarian, and so we anticipate that contract vet line is going to be used until we find a new vet. We'll see a correlated decrease in our salary costs at the same time, which will offset that increase of the contracted vet. They also have, I'll point out the animal feed in 2025, you'll notice that it's upticking. The timing of their ordering of their meat specifically, when there are some years, every few years, when they'll have an extra meat order necessary, and so 2025 is one of those years. So the uptick in 25 accounts for that extra meat order that they will be doing. And then they have also reduced their travel and training, and then they had planned to buy a surgery light that would help to be able to have visibility or clear visibility during surgeries, and they've held off on that as well. I'm going fairly fast. I haven't seen any hands raised for questions, but if there's anything at any point, please stop me. Recreation revenue, we're nearing the end here. Recreation revenues, here you have the collections vending. We have uptick. They've added some vending machines around different city facilities as well as some other locations, and so the revenues were increased last year, so we've upticked those for 24 and 25. Athletics was a healthy year last year, as well as fitness, so we've upticked those numbers for both 24 and 2025. And then the Grand Rapids admission, last year we had quite a bit of rainy days, cold days, some closures, and so that number is probably down slightly, but the last 2 years we have budgeted higher than we've actually collected on those, and so we've reduced those budgets so that we don't end up over budgeting those revenues. We'd rather be conservative and then hit above that than end up coming in low. And so the Garden Rapids admission line has been decreased, and you'll notice the concessions has stayed up. We're hopeful that the concessions will stay high. They've added some other options this year that they think will be successful. But for the Garden Rapids rentals, we've also decreased that estimation for revenues for 24 and 2025. For recreation operations, their budget, we've decreased the bank and credit card charges. We had budgeted pretty high for the last few years, but actualities has showed us that can be reduced, so we brought those down. They also had planned in 2024, we were looking at doing a remodel of their front desk area and kind of front entrance area, and that is being put on hold. We had budgeted an estimation of a little over $200,000 for that were pulled out of the budget. So the $30,000 for their repair buildings in 24 and 25 are to kind of keep the normal operational maintenance and repairs going. They've also reduced their shipping costs line. They've reduced their state sales tax line, meetings, meals, expenses, and then some equipment, office and other equipment that they've pulled out and are kind of putting on the back burner as well. You'll also notice that the gas, oil, diesel, and repair buildings lines, they don't have history in the recreation department, or at least not much. Historically, these were in the parks department. The cost for the recreation building repairs and the cost for recreation gas, oil, and diesel came out of parks. That was kind of a leftover from the transition. But with us now having recreation kind of broken out cleaner, we shifted that cost to, we're going to charge those costs under recreation so we can keep a clear picture of what the recreation buildings and equipment and everything else cost versus the parks, kind of the general parks of the city. Next, you have aquatics. The decreased staff line here, one of their coordinator that they had under aquatics is now under operations, and so the staffing, salary, and benefits costs have been decreased here. And then they also decreased some of the salary numbers on their estimations of what they'll need for the temporary or the seasonal staff for lifeguards and attendance at the big pool or the Garden Rapids. Other than that, they have costs are fairly similar. Chemicals has consistently been a high cost the last few years. We anticipate that will be high again. They hope to have some in the increased concessions that they have. They've also planned to keep their concession costs higher than last year with the added hopeful sales that they'll have. And then aquatic facility, I'll remind you that we've budgeted the last few years $40,000 here to kind of any capital type costs, and then whatever's left we transfer to the capital improvement reserve to hold over for any large capital costs that may come down the road. We've upticked 2024 to $80,000. They had to refinish the slides and do some work on those, so we've added budget there for that. And then in 2025, we're looking at repainting. We initially had the budget at $120,000 to accomplish that. We've reduced that, and maybe you're going to scale it back and do a portion of the repainting and figure out what we can do to kind of have that budget savings in the budget as well. But that'll be the next large cost for the pool, will be that repainting that will be coming. Next, you have the arts budget, a very minimal budget here. It's mostly for supplies and operations, and then they have contract services, are those that provide the training or those art classes. A lot of in the recreation, a lot of what they have for their staffing, they have their some regular staff, full-time staff, and then they have some seasonal staff, but they also use contract labor for like referees and things like that are paid per game or per event. They're paid as contract labor. Under athletics, costs are fairly similar. They have their contract services line there. You'll see that's for the referees. We've seen very healthy enrollment numbers in our athletics programs the last couple of years, and so we expect these costs to stay fairly similar with what we experienced in 2023. They did reduce their meetings and meals expense line to account for some budget savings. And then they have their lease agreement with Leitner, for Clint Leitner Lights and Turf, the line 6571 on page 57. I'll have you note that 24 is the last year we're paying for that lease, so that ends and we'll have those dollars freed up in 2025. The other lease agreement they have is for gymnastics, and that ends in 2028, so we'll see that for a few more years here. Next, we have recreation fitness. All things are fairly equal here. We expect the numbers to stay fairly consistent. I will point out that the rent office space is reduced slightly in 2025. They did renegotiate that term, and so we will see some savings going forward. They've reduced their supplies office line, and then they also have I'll point out the lease agreement for Court Fitness, the very last line, 6574. These continue to uptick. This is the lease agreements for the new equipment, and they've staggered them into kind of 5 phases. And so this year they're adding a new one, and then in 2025 they'll add another group as well. And then I think we'll be full at that point, and the plan will be to renew those agreements when they expire after the 5 years and continue to replace the equipment that's included, so that every year you're getting some new equipment in and you're replacing the old, and everything's on a 5-year cycle. And so when we enter those agreements in typically the fall, in October, November, the cost isn't experienced until the following spring when the equipment's then delivered, and then they bill us for it. And so the timing of those is a little off, because we should have more agreements in 2023, more cost if all of them had been live right when you signed it in the fall, but it doesn't hit until the following budget year. Next, we have the street department budget. This has all the staff for the street specific guys. And then we have, I'll point out that material street repair, it was $500,000 in previous years. I think 2 years ago we upticked it to $650,000 allocated from the general fund for the general street repairs. This is typically the crack seal program and the chip seal program, as well as if we have some sort of issue come up, we have to go repair the street. Some sidewalks and concrete as well comes out of this line. We also budget the same thing in the special traffic way, and our plan is to spend general fund dollars first, and then we utilize the special traffic way funds for what's remaining. We upticked, if you remember, the special traffic way slightly, but there's a limitation of a set amount of revenue that comes in there, so that we couldn't quite increase it to account for the full $2.8 million a year plan that PEC provided. But you will see that this uptick in 2025 to $1.4 million accounts for starting to claw off some of that PEC plan. If we can't do the full 2.8, it won't be 8 years, but we'll be able to plan and adjust and tackle whatever we can. So the $650,000 budgeted in 24 is equal. We did adjust this a couple years back when costs for the road repairs continued to increase, and so it's been at $650 for a couple years now. But at 1.4, we would, from my understanding, they'll scale back some of the crack and chip seal program as they've done it in the past to try to really go tackle the other piece of the PEC evaluations. And I'll also note that the public transportation, the city's piece for transit costs comes out of this line, 6581. And we did receive their request for 2025, and it is an uptick from previous years. So last year was 268,000, 24 request is 266 approximately, and then the request for 25 is 335,000. As far as I understand, that is for some salary adjustments they've made, as well as some equipment to replace a couple of their buses that are needing to be replaced. And then our last section here is the traffic division. These are the crew that goes and takes care of all the traffic signals, all the signage, and does all the painting around town. And so they have their costs, a lot of their material costs for street and material costs for traffic come out of that special traffic way fund. But we do have $80,000 set aside for the maintenance for the traffic signals. This is specifically to tackle replacing the conflict monitors at intersections that are outdated. As I understand, the majority, if not all, of our conflict monitors are outdated and in need of replacement. And the cost is approximately $40,000 per intersection. And so this accounts for 2 intersections being replaced with equipment, and in 24 and then 2 in 2025. So it'll take us a while to be able to go and replace and tackle all of those. That sums it up. You'll see on the totals here, you have the total revenues budgeted, the total expenses, and then that grand total line is the delta between the two. So in 24, your expenses exceed your revenues by the $3,060,000, and in 2025, those expenses exceed revenues by that 3.8. At the end, you have all the supplemental information included in your binders and included in the attachment on the online agenda that was provided by departments, and then the breakout of those adjustments that were made so that the commission and the public can know what departments did come back and adjust in their budgets. I'll just kind of reiterate my gratitude to our department directors, department heads. It's always tough to say, hey, you need to go cut back in your budget, but they did so very graciously, and they all came up with great ideas to say, hey, here's what we can do, and feasibly, how do we make how do we make this work? And they were very creative, and a lot of them had great conversations with me to decide what was the best tack to move forward. I will say that all of those are suggestions. The commission will have the ultimate authority to designate any of those staying in the budget as cuts, any of those being brought back into the budget, and then separate adjustments made. And our request from the commission at this time is to any feedback or any direction you have for us to be able to provide you information you need so that those conversations in July can be as fruitful to you as possible. If you remember last year, those who were on the commission and those who've reviewed the last year's items, we came back with items that were identified as potential added costs or potential eliminated costs or potential revenue increases, and categorized them kind of by a red, yellow, green staff input on it. We can do the same. We can come back with different levers to pull or different options for this commission to consider. But if there's things that you want us to bring back information on as your levers you want to look at, that is very helpful to us. Any analysis we can do to help your decision, we will be happy to do. My voice is now gone. I'm going to go chug a gallon of water, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. My plan, I'm hoping to come back in 2 weeks and present the capital improvement plan as we currently have it and kind of look at that so that you can incorporate that in your next decision. And then our next conversations are in July, where we look at, okay, once we have the data from the county on that valuation, what's the delta? What are we needing to kind of meet? And then any of those adjustments that the commission wants to make constitute the July conversations so that we can prepare to indicate to the county what that revenue neutral rate intent will be and what that proportionate levy we anticipate would be as well.
No, good job. I mean, maybe we can find something like we did with implementing the vending machines, because that's kind of you gain weight and then you go to the exercise room and you lose weight. So
you need it all.
Memberships kind of go hand in hand, so we can find revenues that happen that way.
Dennis passing out candy.
Yeah. Great job. I appreciate all the staff departments, head departments finding ways to try and see if we can keep this mill levy flat as much as possible. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think we can get there.
Well, the documentation and breakdown, Jared, is exceptional. I mean, just really all the details, so we really appreciate that. It was a lot to go through, and you can tell, there's made some really hard decisions, and I mean, I really appreciate that they're speaking with you and helping, really explain, hey, if we could add this back, this would be really valuable, so that's good information.
I think the more we dig through this and kind of look at any ideas we come up with, maybe we can email Matt and you as well and just give us, from our standpoint, I mean, there was a lot of information that I mean, not just the budget itself, but all of the information on the backup information as well that I was trying to go through. So between now and next week, or the next meeting, I should say, I could probably email you and Matt and give you an idea of kind of my thoughts, and maybe that's where the other commissioners could be.
Yes, I agree. I do wonder if I could look at the levers that we did pull last year, see the history of that, to give me a general idea of, well, this is what we've reduced. Does it make more sense to keep reducing that, et cetera?
Yep.
And I think it may be a couple years worth, 3 years worth, not only for those of you that this is your first time around on the budget lap, but for folks kind of drawn back on memory who have gone through this 3 or 4 times, because there are different, like we said, there's different ways we've created that path to a level budget in past years. So kind of a refresh for everybody, staff included, is a good suggestion. And we'll prepare any material. If you all individually kind of offer up some ideas, and I would say at this point you don't have to own those ideas. You just kind of throw those out. Hey, I'd like there at least to be some commission discussion on this. We'll kind of log those and make that part of the staff support memo on the next budget. And so it kind of accounts back those individual conversations back to the collective. And then we'll provide you that background information on past budget memos that we did in the last week or the last 2 meetings, where we've given some recommendations of what changes might be made, or kind of good source material.
The only other question I have, I know that, that we've had to purchase things ahead of time, or when you could get them because of, supply issues. Is that kind of over, Jared, now, or supply issues, or are they still experiencing those? And so, because that would be helpful to know when
I think they've diminished. I wouldn't say they're over. Depending on the equipment, I know transformers is still an issue for the electric department. That probably will continue to be an issue for a while. Some of the specialty equipment probably is more so. Solid waste trucks, we've consistently seen that if we lease them, we can get them, but they're not selling them. So I think some of those will still exist for a while, but it's definitely diminished. During COVID, 2020, 2021, we couldn't get anything. We had multiple bids that by the time we brought it to the commission, they'd sold it to someone else because the demand was so high that taking a week to bring it to an item, we would lose it. And so we're not seeing that quite as drastic at this point, but we're definitely still experiencing some delays or some lead times on that equipment. A lot of the time, it's not so much an addition in this year, it's an adjustment for, it was budgeted in 23, now we're carrying it in 24, but the cash is there because we didn't spend it in 23. So those are less impactful when we planned on it one year and then it just hasn't happened yet. It's when something breaks or something goes terribly wrong. Those are the ones that really derail or cause a little bit more grief than the plan that just delayed a little while.
What I had is how we could play with seasonal personnel, what the numbers would look like, with the reduction of that or wages, et cetera. That's one initial thought that I had.
Yep. Yeah, I think to Commissioner Cessna or Matt's point, if you don't mind emailing them so that there's some reference I can go back and look at too, that would be great. If you just say, hey, give us a ballpark idea of what would this look like, what would this number probably be? There's assumptions in most of those. So if we say, okay, we're gonna charge more for a service, well, we'll probably have less of that provided then if there's a higher cost. So some of that you have to kind of weigh, and it's going to be a guess or an assumption. But I can run those and maybe do scenarios of kind of a high, medium, low for the commission to consider as well. So any potential direction you would consider looking into, I can try to quantify in the best way possible for you. So giving me the idea of what's the lever you're looking at, or what's the shift of services provided or staffing or fees or collections or anything like that. If you give me the general direction, I'll try to give you a number to quantify with it.
I was also just curious, when they do internet sales, I know that they collect sales tax. Does the city see any of that when they do those kind of sales tax? Does it come through the state to us?
It comes through use tax.
Okay.
So that's the use tax. We'll see the consumer use tax. And that's why, if you remember a couple of years ago, we had a very excessive use tax. That was from a remote purchase of equipment that was going to end up here. And so that's it's where it ends up. It's not where it's purchased from. The company might be out of Virginia and they buy it in Virginia, but if they're going to go install it in Finney County or Garden City or use it in here, that's where the use tax comes into play, and they send it to the end entity. And so that's where the use tax line is, those kind of internet sales or other type of things like that.
And Jared and Matt, to provide you the most ample time to prepare any of our thoughts, is there not necessarily a deadline, but an ideal time frame to send things to you?
I would say if next meeting I'm planning to present on the CIP, your options won't necessarily play into that at this point. It'll be more informational for you to say, here's what it's looking at right now. you can adjust it as you want, or you can choose different projects to move up the priority list. So those pieces you're going to throw in won't really change that conversation. So if by the end of next week, kind of mid next week was possible, that gives me a couple weeks before our first conversation in July to present that to you and have it kind of ready to give you those figures or that idea as you begin that deliberation and that conversation amongst commissioners of, what do we adjust? What are we shifting here? And I'll point out in this third supplemental, the general fund adjustments documents, you see the total breakouts for the departments of the shifts that they made, and then the itemization of that is that's page 2 and page 3. The column that says priority, those are what the department indicated was their preferred thing to add back if possible. And on those that are high dollar, so the access control for IT and the vehicles for police, if it's a scaled back portion of that, they'll just bite off however much they can. And then the other pieces on the front page are cost savings that kind of Matt and I worked on, the vacancy savings or the usage of the 0.15 sales tax in 2025 for CIP instead of a transfer from the general fund. Those transfers in from the work comp reserve as well as the capital improvement reserve, those are all kind of encompassed in the other section here as well. So the cost savings or the reduction that we've accomplished thus far from what was initially proposed is that $4.2 million, approximately $2 million of which is from the departments themselves cutting something or reducing costs in their budgets.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Jared.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Just needed a bigger binder.
Yeah.
That's all for the budget. We didn't run out of money, we ran out of binder.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I think we're at the point of the agenda where the only remaining business items are 12D, 12E, 12F. All of those are executive sessions. No action is anticipated after those. So if the commission would like to take up the consent agenda, you're saving a lot of time. The consent agenda consists of one item. So if approved, the consent agenda item would be 13A.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda of 13A.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed.
All right. Would you like to do commissioner reports? And then following the commissioner reports, we can shut down the broadcast of the meeting.
Yep. All right. So first up, we'll go with Commissioner Cessna.
Really good pre-meeting this morning about all the playground equipment around the community and kind of an idea of where to kind of lead that. So good job on that presentation. Cemetery looked really good during the Memorial Day holiday. Just like to get an update on where we're at on the addition that we're doing at Valley View. If you could give us an update, kind of where that's at. I mean, not right now, but
sure.
Maybe at next commission meeting or an email. Yeah. A lot of activities happening in the community during Beef Empire Days. That's in full swing, so please get out and participate in that. Have a lot of people from out of town in the community, which is great to see. School district summer programs are in full swing. Also attended the Finney County Library kickoff of its summer reading program. Zoo has its summer camps taking place, and that's starting up. So if you haven't registered, you might do so on that. Great to see the new airport terminal fully up and operational. It's a great doorway to the community. Attended the ribbon cutting of the new Burlington store. Also attended the groundbreaking of Dream First Bank, which was yesterday. Good attendance on that. Just shows that our community continues to grow here and really becoming a regional hub in western Kansas. And want to thank the street department in helping clean up the community after the recent storms that we have, especially the other day when we had those real heavy winds and had a lot of limbs down around the community. So just wrapping up, just shop local and fly local. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. All right, next we'll have Commissioner Landgraf.
I just want to repeat what Commissioner Sessa said, and thank you for providing that information on the park playground equipment. It's nice having that information and kind of getting a plan going forward to the future, starting to think of those types of ideas. Also want to remind folks about all the upcoming Beef Empire Days events, and also thank you to all the people who've already participated in the events before. I saw there was 57 people in like the tennis tournament, so it's cool seeing like even for Beef Empire Day, seeing people getting out for like tennis and other types of events as well. Also, congratulations to Dream First Bank on their groundbreaking. It's nice seeing them investing in our community long-term with that type of investment. Also, in regards to events going on, we have the Pro-Am Golf Tournament this weekend. I know the proceeds towards that go to a lot of different wonderful nonprofit organizations in our community. So just want to remind people about that going on. And also, since we had the sign ordinance, we'll remind people about the Race Against Trafficking 5K that is going on. It's a great event going to 2 great charities that really help people. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, next we'll have Commissioner Wynn.
Yes, so first, speaking of the sign ordinance, can I have a copy of that? Just to see the little requirements for those. Also, Touch a Truck was so cool. I wasn't able to make it, but I had so many awesome comments of young boys feeling like they were literally on top of the world with the Touch a Truck event. That was so good. And an awesome reminder that the advisory boards are still needing people, and this is the best way to get involved in your community and actually make a difference. So please consider sending an application for the advisory board. And also the airport is looking so awesome. I flew out last week for my graduation in New York and came back and I was like, whoa, is this Garden City, Kansas? That was so cool. But also keep an eye open for general election. There's going to be a lot of signs up. I have a big feeling that there's going to be a lot of signs up this season. But also keep in mind of what is on the ballot, who's on the ballot, and the best way to check on that is by looking at the Finney County Elections website. So grab a look because I think more than ever this general election is very, very important. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next we'll have Commissioner Unruh.
Yes, it is hard going last because then all the good stuff's taken. So, and you hate saying, the same as everybody else, but I do want to say thank you for the playground and park updates. I think it was really important. These are spaces and places where families and friends meet, and kids play. And there's a lot that go on at the parks, and so I know they're really well utilized and they've been really well done. So I really appreciated the different levels and also just the different information and also a chance to kind of dream a little bit when we have more money. So it was a really great presentation. The cemetery is incredible. It's a beautiful area. I was up there the other day and when after the storm, and so there are a lot of trees and limbs down. And you saw the crews out there. This was at 7 o'clock in the morning already cleaning up everything. So that was really nice to see. I did have a couple of people ask me about tree replacements or if they could install trees, and I said, that's something that I will have to check on. I don't know how that looks, what that looks like, but I don't think you can just plant a tree when you want to. You have to really kind of check on that. So I would, if we can get some clarification on that, Matt, what that looks like, and then I can get back with him. And
be glad to.
Yeah. Beef Empire Days is always exciting. The weather has been absolutely incredible as far as moisture, so it brings people in from the field who normally be there. But I think also this idea of if there is an event for each and every person that you can participate in, and it is really a neat time in Garden City. The weekends are packed, so just make sure you're getting lots of rest, and also sunscreen. I found out I need to wear that a little bit more. So, but it's really been a neat opportunity. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you to Jared and all of the work. The budget, when you go through it and you look at all of the detail and then you have to come back and look at the detail again, there's some very hard decisions have been made, and I really appreciate the willingness to make sure that we as a community are spending the tax dollars in the best way that we possibly can, knowing that, living in Garden City, one of the best places to live, the best place to live in Kansas, but one of the best places to live anywhere around, you think about what that looks like in keeping essential services and things really moving forward. So the time and energy spent to really make the hard decisions, we really appreciate. I know as a commission we do. So with that, that's all.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just have a few things to add. I won't kind of repeat what everyone says, but I think they've made great points to kind of just me to follow up and kind of just identify some of those others that didn't get mentioned. But I've been asked to do a lot of welcome speeches, so I'm happy to do that. It's a great opportunity to just express the city's thankfulness and gratefulness that they have invested in our community. So last week I attended the Burlington welcome them for their grand opening. That was a great turnout. They had a school that they awarded a $500 check to, $5,000 check to. So that was amazing. So their reinvestment back into the community is very appreciated by those as well. So groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, everywhere that's possible, the news coming in to Garden City. So we just thank those developers and just their investment in Garden City as well. Sales tax, we do, I mean, we appreciate the voters, all of the information that's getting put out, but we would appreciate a voter turnout. So that's where, your information, your research, your things come into play on what's coming. The sales tax is one that's a very important sales tax that we need as a community to continue the services that we offer for police, fire, zoo, golf, and everything else that we have as amenities here in Garden City. So it's very important to have the voter turnout at that vote. One other thing I'd like to express is I appreciate the opportunity to think about a potential support with a sponsorship for something like that with GC, keeping our local kids who are going into professional worlds, keeping them here in the communities. What a great way to kind of just get them the information that they need to make contact with our professionals here in Garden City and our surrounding areas. One that's kind of similar, I think they've been doing this for a couple years now, is the summer intern program through Garden City, Kansas. I think it's southwestern Kansas. No, it's not right. I don't remember who it's from, but they do a summer interactive program where they offer events to newcomers, to people who don't know what's going on or happening in Garden City. They'll invite them to an event. This year it's at Hidden Trail, and I've been asked to do a welcome there, and they just take those people or those professionals out into the community and offer them places to go and interact and just show them what's great about Garden City. So that's great that they're doing that. So that's kind of in correlation with that other program that was asking for sponsorships, but they have a number of places that they are traveling to. So I appreciate their efforts on getting that information to those new professionals. And then lastly, I do have, probably two more things. There has been some information in your utility bills, just to kind of be aware that if you hadn't, and it's probably happening now, is they are shutting off your power if you haven't paid it. So just recognize that. I know it's tough, but it's just been going on since January as far as trying to get those customers finalized on their final payment. So if you need information, call the city, or go online and get that fixed, and then they'll be happy to help you if you have any trouble with that. Lastly, there is a Home Run for Heroes softball fast pitch tournament, USSSA, very first one for girls youth sports. And I am the president of that board, so I just like to have that information out and then published to the community to go and support. They also invited the city, the fire department, the police department, and anyone who are heroes in the community, so that we can just support them and give back to those people who are actually heroes in our community, to express our appreciation to them as well. So I think with that's everything I had on my list. So if Dr. B also at that, we'll go with the executive session.
Were you going to update about the meeting with the?
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. Thanks for. I could have that on here. Friday we did have a meeting with the interlocal agreement progress with the county, and I think for the most part it went well. It was well received. It was well communicated, and I think we have a joint effort to go to the next step and offer a combined, kind of consensus on what that looks like for the negotiations on that contract. So we do have a deadline on that They might express an extension for that to get that completed, but if that's what it takes to get this agreement done, we'll go ahead and do that. But we'll continue to keep everyone in the loop on that information. So if there's any other.
Mayor, is there specific topics of negotiation or parts of it?
Mostly it was on the communication portion of it. It wasn't on necessarily of, and I guess if you wanted to stand up and kind of explain that a little bit, Danielle, you can kind of, but as far as my recollection on that, it was more to do with communication and participation with the county.
And when's your deadline that you're?
The contract, well,
I can speak to that
Yeah.
if you'd like.
Yeah.
So in the contract itself, there is a termination clause, and that's kind of the deadline that we've been talking about. Either side can provide notice by July 1 to the other party regarding their interest in continuing that kind of ongoing service. If nobody provides notice, then we continue it for another year. So that was one of the things at that meeting that we discussed, is maybe modifying that portion of it so that we can continue to work through some of these negotiations and bring back kind of an updated agreement to both governing bodies to consider at a future meeting. But that way we're not limited to that July 1 deadline, because we certainly will not get that wrapped up in the next couple weeks. We're slated to meet again as a large group at the end of June to continue those conversations and really talk through some of those process components so that we know kind of and can clearly define those swim lanes, is kind of how we've been talking about it, in terms of where each party's responsibility starts and stops as it relates to that agreement. Not only the current agreement that we have in place now, but what do we want that to look like going forward long term, to make sure that we're kind of meeting the key goals of both the city and the county. So a little bit of hopefully answering both of those questions.
You. Thank you, Danielle.
Yep.
All right. With that, I believe we'll go into the executive sessions portion. If anybody want to make a motion on those?
I would just request, Mayor, we take a 10-minute recess before we go into executive session.
Okay.
And then we can start at 3 o'clock, the first executive session, if that's okay with you.
Yes. Perfect. I'll make the, so you would do all three at once, or do you need us
Is
separate?
Jimmy here? Okay, yeah. I think the first one, Mayor, item 12D, the specific purpose on that would be, I'll let Jennifer give the description, the specific purpose outside of, on 12D.
For attorney-client privilege related to contractual liability.
And then we'd like in that Jennifer Cunningham, City Manager Allen, Assistant City Manager Burke, and Assistant City Attorney James Dummermuth.
Correct.
How long do you?
20 minutes.
Okay. Starting at 3 o'clock?
Correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we add Alicia as well?
Yeah, Alicia Charles added to that, please. Cool.
Mayor, I make the motion that the governing body go into executive session pursuant to KSA 754319B2 pertaining to consultation with an attorney for the body or agency which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client privilege for the attorney-client privilege on information. Jennifer Cunningham, Matt Allen, Assistant City Burke, Assistant City Attorney Dummermuth, and
Alicia
Charles be present in that commission, or in the executive session, starting at 3 o'clock and going for 20 minutes.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed.
All right. And we'll conclude the broadcast.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.